Let's get right to our first guest this hour, Rob Pincus. He's a former law enforcement officer and creates gun safety programs. He has been active in the fight for Second Amendment rights for nearly 2 decades now and is a self-identified gun hobbyist. Rob, thank you so much for joining us tonight on The Why.
Great to be here. Thank you, Veronica.
Of course. So we know you like to shoot guns, but you also believe in gun safety. But there are people who say, hey, guns and safety, they don't go hand in hand. Why do you think guns are so controversial?
They're an emotional object, right? A lot of people have very strong convictions about them. Obviously, there are some people who feel very passionately about them because they enjoy them. There's people who think they are intrinsically tied into our human rights and certainly our enumerated civil rights here in the United States. And there's other people who I think justifiably don't understand them and therefore fear them, as we all fear things that are unknown to us and obviously can cause great harm. There are negative outcomes connected to guns, and I think that's why the safety, the education, and even just the awareness information is so important.
So why do you think ghost guns are becoming more and more popular for gun enthusiasts and criminals, if you will?
Well, I can certainly attest to why I think they're more important to the gun community and why more and more hobbyists are taking up the craft of private gun making. It's become easier over the years. There's more industry support. Companies like Polymer 80, organizations like the National Association of Sporting Goods Wholesalers and the National Shooting Sports Foundation are certainly embracing the opportunity to reach more consumers and work with more industry companies that are manufacturing not only the kits to build gun, but also the parts. And the 3D printer, like I have behind me, the advancing technology of 3D printing has also been embraced by private gun makers. So that's why it's more popular all throughout the firearms community and in some cases the technology community as well.
Well, how easy is it to make one of these 3D printed guns? I mean, I know that you're sitting in front of a 3D printer there. Can you do a show and tell? How easy is it to make this gun? How easy is it at the end of the day to get your hands on these kits?
Well, let's talk about 3D printing first. If you have computer-aided drafting skills, if you can work a CAD program, if you have the technical know-how to set up and calibrate the machine, if you understand the various different filaments, the raw materials that go into them, it can be relatively simple to print a firearm frame. For example, something like this handgun frame. This is a modified frame. You can see I have my company logo on it and some other just little changes to the way it's shaped. But this design was done by somebody with much more advanced engineering and computer-aided design skills than I have. These files were put out into the public domain. You can print them directly with a printer that, again, that's set up and calibrated with the right filament. And that might take 12 to 15 hours. And then you're in for another few hours of work after that. And in this case, hundreds of dollars worth of extra parts. So the parts that go into this printed frame are commercially manufactured parts for firearms that could go into a manufactured gun, a traditionally manufactured gun, or a privately made firearm. So there's a fair amount of technical know-how and workmanship and craftsmanship that has to go into that. On the other hand, some of the kits, the kit builds can be much simpler. What I always tell people is that at the end of the day, the firearms owner who makes their own firearm is a safer and more responsible firearms owner. They understand more about how the gun works. They've obviously been interested enough in firearms to learn how to build their own, maintain their own, and get their own working. And I think that's a really important and often overlooked aspect of why the hobby is so important to the gun community.
But we are talking about illegal gun trafficking tonight. That is our topic of conversation. And we want to ask you as our bottom line question, break it down for us. Why is the number of illegal guns on the streets on the rise? Why are they increasing?
Well, I would like to hope it's because that law enforcement is becoming more efficient at finding the real criminals. They're finding people who are engaged in violent crime, or they're finding people who are involved in illegally manufacturing or selling guns with the knowledge that they're being sold and transferred to people who are going to commit crimes. You know, if you could identify for me the gun shops, and this is the job of the ATF, really, where are those gun shops I keep hearing about that are clearly selling guns to known criminals or engaging in straw purchases so that someone who can pass a background check can get the guns into criminals' hands, right? Everybody involved in that is a danger to our society. That's where I think the attention should be placed, not on the hobbyist gun maker. Again, where is the local law enforcement and where is the federal law enforcement taking action against the people who are really threatening our kids in our society?
All right. Rob Pincus, we appreciate you starting off our hour here on The Why. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Still ahead, we hear from the other